engagement's just one small piece of a bigger puzzle. And to be honest, an agency can skew data, particularly social data, in any way to make a campaign look successful, particularly when it comes to vanity metrics.
This is Velocitize Talks. I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with George Pappas, the co-founder and director of web and content at G Squared. George, great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about launching your own agency 7 years ago, and sort of what the original opportunity was that you saw when you created that agency.
What we tried to do was to find a way of standing out, and at that point in time, it was about sort of 6 or 7 years ago now. It was only about a year or so after we'd formally been established, after having this freelance duo together and properly incorporating and so on. Qantas at the time and a few other brands had got themselves in a bit of strife in social media land. There was a few problems that occurred at these hours when there were interactions that weren't monitored. On one particular occasion, there was a promotion being run and someone posted a nude photo of someone, themselves, nobody knows, and someone under the age of 18 saw it. So the Advertising Standards Bureau at the time made a kind of somewhat of a landmark ruling that suggested that third-party content posted on your social channel can be deemed your own. So that ruling kind of got the cogs turning in George and my head. And we thought, sort of, is this the opportunity now? Can we leverage off this decision and this change in the industry to then launch a service or launch some sort of positioning to allow us to have this compelling and competitive advantage that we've sought after for so long? So at that time, we put our heads together and started structuring a service that allowed us to become a 24/7 agency. This 24/7 solution, or the 24/7 offering, ultimately, in plain language, is a 24/7 social media monitoring service. 30 staff that not all 30 staff are working 24/7. There's a team of 15 of those who are working on that 24/7 service that work on a sort of shift by shift basis and work directly with the client and directly with myself and the rest of the agency in providing that around the clock support.
What have you found is either the similarities or the differences between the type of work that you were doing for small and medium-sized enterprises versus the larger brands?
What we find that there's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. I think the similarities normally are in the agile and nimble approach that everyone is seeking at the moment. I think that's across the board. People want an agile and nimble approach to their account, to a campaign, and to a particular strategy. We don't live in a world of 40-page strategy documents developed over a 24-month period. In contrast, we live in a live strategy environment, and we often say the best strategies are written on the back of a napkin. It's the idea and the delivery of which is fluid. It's not necessarily that 40-page big document, here you are, let's use this as a manual and guide to abide by for the next 12 or 24 months. So I think that is the similarity. The difference perhaps is the contact that you have with marketing folks. So you can speak in a more technical manner to a marketing manager or a digital marketing manager or someone that's perhaps in an IT or comms team than you can with a business owner.
Tell us a little bit about the differences that you see among generations. So Gen Z, for instance, considered to be woke, right, and not necessarily afraid of potentially divisive issues. In some ways, they embrace it more than other generations. What type of content do you find really resonates for, let's say, Gen Z?
The younger markets are often the hardest ones to penetrate for a number of reasons, and one is because of the access they have to a dynamic and broad range of content that exists at the touch of a button or a click of a button at the moment for them, whereas perhaps the older generations are generally a more considered content consumption journey. They've perhaps grown up on reading the newspaper, having it delivered to them, whereas today we're getting everything delivered to us. We're no longer searching for the news is finding us. So with that known, reaching Gen Z, Gen Y, whatever it might be, is a lot more challenging for brands and likewise for agencies, because they're not necessarily searching for the content. The content must find them, and it has to be the most accurate and the most relatable and relevant content. Otherwise, again, at the click of a button, they can make sure that brand never finds them again. I'm
kind of curious, are you seeing any new channels or platforms coming along?
The platforms will condense at the moment. I think we'll be looking at dealing with less platforms rather than more. But to your question, I think TikTok is the platform that we'll be seeing more of at the moment. Their Vine unfortunately disappeared, and there was an active and real audience on Vine, and it disappeared for commercial reasons and other variables too. But what was driving Vine was its very active community, and it made a lot of influencers. And these influencers then went to Twitter, then went to Instagram. And these influencers very much still exist, and what they are, they're content creators. So TikTok's emergence now has been dramatically spiked because of these content creators, once again, returning because of the short form nature of these platforms. Short form looping videos is the name of TikTok, of course, very much like Vine was at the time, but it started as a music video platform, as you rightly recognise. But I still think there's room for a short form video platform in the current matrix. But I think where we will be seeing a platform consolidation as opposed to an expansion of the amount of platforms that we're dealing with at the moment in the land of social. And I think if there's anything that's going to make an emergence, and there is a few out there at the moment, it would be social aggregators. In other words, one app that brings everything together. We've sort of failed to have one that's absolutely nailed it at the moment. I think that would be something that I'm keeping a keen eye out for.
I'm kind of curious, you've been a little bit of a Facebook skeptic. Why do you think Instagram has been so much more successful among let's say the younger generations than Facebook?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a Facebook skeptic. I think I certainly was an organic reach skeptic. So when I wrote in Mumbrella about the sort of imminent death of organic reach on Facebook at the time a few years ago, if it was dying then, it sure as hell is almost dead now. And organic reach was something that everyone was complaining about its imminent death. And why aren't we getting a free ride anymore on Facebook as brands? And I think we all had to sort of have a realistic look at it and a more pragmatic look at what the platform had to do.
I'm kind of curious, read an article about Instagram doing away with the likes potentially, and what kind of a change do you think that might have for brands as they consider platforms like Instagram and the metrics that they use to evaluate the success of various campaigns?
I think these vanity metrics, we call them, are an important part of what makes up Instagram and the monopoly money fame that comes with likes and followers. But I think what as brands we need to move away from vanity metrics anyway. So it could be forcing us to do the right thing. Stop necessarily looking at likes, comments, clicks, and shares, and start looking at broader metrics in that conversation as well. I mean, engagement's just one small piece of a bigger puzzle. And to be honest, an agency can skew data, particularly social data, in any way to make a campaign look successful, particularly when it comes to vanity metrics. So it's a dangerous conversation to have when you're looking at it at that insular, pigeonholed level. But to your point, I mean, I don't think necessarily that Instagram's going to go as far as stopping even the content creator from seeing the number of likes that they got on a particular post. I think it's more the public. So I think it can still be used as a measure. I'm not supportive or unsupportive of it at this point in time. I'm interested to see how the trial in Canada goes. I think what Instagram's doing, and rightly so, is trying to increase the focus on content and decrease the focus on these vanity metrics.
In your role as director of web, what are some of the 5 things that you think brands need to consider as they either create or rebrand a website?
Well, at the moment, I think the number one sort of consideration, particularly for the bigger websites, is we need to start considering personalization. And I think that the newer technology that exists at the moment is starting to support personalization, not only geo-personalization, but actual proper content personalization. And I think the closer we get to properly personalizing web experiences, the closer we'll get to actually nailing everyone's unique journey and the nuances of the nuances and needs of each unique user. I think we'll be looking back in 10 years, 20 years time and think, do you remember when we used to sort of design the same homepage for everyone? How funny was that? I think we'll certainly be having that conversation, and I think that's the core consideration at the moment for people when they're looking at a scalable solution is, can it scale to personalize?
Are there any brands that you think are doing it well in that other category with the homepage sort of personalization?
It's hard for me to sort of off the top of my head pinpoint one, but look, there are various e-commerce players, and the bigger e-commerce players, I mean, like your Iconic, your ASOS, those kind of players who who have personalized the journey based on your behavior already, and looking at, the funny thing about personalization is it's not necessarily only dependent on your experience on their website, right? It's also a full funnel personalization journey. So personalizing first contact, personalizing first ad contact on social, personalizing your Google Ads contact, and then making sure that the ecosystem's all running together and the message is consistent, but not only consistent, but personalized to your journey. So I think that's an interesting development too. But in terms of the e-commerce players doing it, well, the majors are certainly the ones that have started dabbling in that area. But for me, it's about when that will certainly become mainstream.
George, one of the questions we love asking our guests is a book or podcast that you'd like to recommend.
There's various podcasts that I'm listening to and others in the office are listening to at the moment. Markcast by Marketing Mag's a good one, particularly insight into other CMOs, people in the industry and campaigns they're running. Non-work related, No Such Thing as a Fish. It's by the writers of QI, Stephen Fry's show. But in terms of what I'm reading at the moment, funnily enough, I'm a big Seinfeld fan, and I'm reading Seinfeldia, which is kind of the behind-the-scenes look into the show and how it started, and sort of Jerry and Larry and their the nuances of their relationship. So I find that rather interesting, and to be honest, a lot of their observational and relatable humour I find day-to-day in marketing and digital.
That's awesome. Thanks, George.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That was George Pappas, the co-founder and director of web and content at G Squared.